Next, we have a panel discussion on a very interesting topic, impediments and benefits of automation and robotics in the data center. This is a widely spoken about topic, on various forums. Let me introduce you to the moderator and our esteemed panelists. We have with us as a moderator today, Professor Mona Nasr, Faculty of Computers and Artificial Intelligence, Helwan University, and she will be the moderator of the session. Our esteemed panelist, Mr. Mohamed Gamal, Group Information Technology Director from United Eastern Medical Services, Mr. Milen Nikolov, Senior Analyst, IT Security, Risk and Compliance, ADNOC Group, Mr. Aslam, Head of Architecture and Planning, Seera Group, and Mr. Arshad Siddiquie, Information Technology Security Engineer, a leading fertilizer company. Over to you, Professor, to moderate the session, and I welcome all our esteemed panelists on the stage. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to moderate this important session. And I have this session with my colleague, Mr. Milen, Mr. Mohamed Gamal, Mr. Saaim, and Mr. Arshad. First of all, we would like to thank this invitation that we join this summit of KSA Hyper Cloud and Data Center Summit. We are talking about the high performance cloud service to match the rising demand and deliver innovation and technological information. We are nowadays at our second day, and we really enjoy all the previous session. Today, our session, we have many questions concerning our topic. The first question, we will go through a conversation with my colleague. The first question we would like to ask our colleague at our session, what are some of the main challenges to the wider adoption of robotics and automation in the data center? Mr. Milen?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the question is about main challenges. May I ask you, how do you read me? Loud and clear, I suppose?
Yes, we are hearing you very well.
Oh, thank you so much. So after the sound check, let me start by saying that it's a topic close and near to my heart. I do believe that there are great opportunities, specifically in the robotics and automation field in the data center. The main challenges, I think, as with many events I've attended, most people just say what the problems are. And we generally, what we need to do is not just tackle those problems, and understanding those problems in detail will help us that. But I think participants in such an event would expect also some answers. So we can start by defining those problems, right? I think pretty much in 5 main categories. The first category is obviously cost. If you're investing in a technology and in a market that is extremely dynamic, such as the data center, and obviously the on-premises infrastructure for a lot of organizations, the investment and the cost associated with it, management is always going to ask you for every dollar that you spend on that environment. And automation and specifically robotics is not exactly cheap, right? So the first challenge is the cost. The second one is clarity associated with that cost, because in dynamic times, we would like to have flexibility to be able to use hybrid and multi-cloud. And on-premises is one part of that equation. So in the future, if management decides, for example, to outsource the vast majority of the cloud workloads, that justification for you spending on the automation and the robotization of a data center, it cannot be justified. So making those plans is kind of very hard. Also, the technology stack, which automation platform supplier you're going to go with, future-proofing that stack is really difficult, because it's a very early and nascent sort of stage in the development of the automation and specifically robotics in the cloud center, where basically in the experimental stage when it comes to robotics, The automation, I wouldn't say it's completely mature. It's still a very dynamic field. So is the time right? So you need to ask yourself that question. And the third challenge is the future-proofing it. Basically going with which is the right technology provider, which is the technology that you can bank on. And we all know how in the industry what happens with a lot of mainstream technologies that we thought this is the future. And now we look back and see, oh, Visual Basic for applications. That might not have been the best platform to put our investment on. And obviously, cybersecurity is always a concern. And the data center industry being one of the most conservative industries, I would say when it comes to cybersecurity, as the previous speakers have already mentioned, it's basically a major sort of tick that a lot of those continuous integration, continuous development pipelines that people are developing, in a conservative environment, you're not exactly going to be welcomed with wide open arms to go and implement all that automation and all this innovation. So that resistance to change is prevalent in the industry, unfortunately. So yeah, these are pretty much the disadvantage. I could mention also the lack of qualified professionals in the automation industry, people with the experience, and so on and so forth. That's what I think are the major challenges from my point of view, and my colleagues, I'm sure, will be able to pitch in as well. Thank you.
Professor Mona, are you there?
It might be a little bit of a problem with the connection, but I think my colleague Mohamed, my fellow presenter, he also has a keen interest in our area. Maybe he can highlight a few of the challenges as well, because we've been discussing this. Obviously.
One of those, yes.
Yes, I think Professor's facing a few technical challenges.
All right, I'm audible now?
Yes, Mr. Gamal, you are.
All right, as my colleague Milen mentioned about the common challenges and the barrier in moving forward to the data center automation, we know what is the common business challenges when we start the journey. The requirement is there to be more agile, to be more fast when we provision infrastructure for different purpose, either to ease the implementation or save the time or cost, or even improve the quality for the deliverable. So like any new technology, when it comes to automation, people always fear the change, and this is quite normal. Organizations have spent years refining their process, making the lines and production process as efficient as possible. And when we introduce in a new piece of automation, there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that the tools and process introduced is bug-free and will not cause any issue to the organization, or even introduce a value. So it's automation should be associated with a value to organization, not just moving without understand the purpose. Likewise, I'm working in a private sector. Cost is a big element also to how we can justify the cost of automation and modernizing our operation, which is sometimes quite a challenge, and we have to justify the cost over a period of time and show the value of deliverable. And of course, if you are not in a software or a technology company and working for a private sector, different industry, in my case, for example, healthcare, justifying the data center automation and requirement, it is sometimes quite a challenge, and we have to even translate the technical to business and make it easy for the management to understand the value of what we are delivering Also, lack of flexibility, maybe sometime within the solution, while we are focusing mainly about the technology enhancement, we have to link this somehow to overall performance of the operation and how this will change the way we work. If you are developing or having a business line application or a software that require a dynamic operation to change. And this is very common, by the way, in healthcare, especially nowadays, everyone moving to digitalization, where we have a virtual consultation and electronic health system connecting patient to the facility. And we have to have a dynamic operation and agile technology to adopt such a requirement. So there's also another fear when it comes to a machine replacing stuff. It's on the other hand, when you introduce a piece of technology, there is always a fear how this will affect the manpower or the resources. Yes, you are saving the cost in another hand, but people who's adopting the technology maybe is having a fear to move forward to the automation system and robotics in the data center and moving to the new technology. So I think this is the common barrier and challenges of adopting automation in data center and common technology operation.
So Professor did join us again. I think she's, after joining us, she's continuing to face internet or technical challenges. So if we could have the next speaker pick up the subject, please.
Well, I'd like to ask, because Saaim and I had a brief discussion about robotics, which is an extremely interesting topic in the data center. So I think if Saaim can share some of the, what does he see as the main aspects of robotics in the data center, and how does it see, for example, the fact that robotics is very, modern robotics is very limited processing capabilities within the main robot infrastructure. So how does he see the evolution of that sector? And, do you think the new robotics projects may leverage something like remote brain architecture or something exciting like that?
Yeah, sure, Mr. Milen. I'll continue our conversation that we were having earlier. And it's actually related to what you were mentioning earlier, cost being a big factor. And I would probably emphasize more on cost, because a lot of people think it's easier to look at the flaws of human beings, like we make mistakes, we need breaks, we need a salary. So let's look at robotics and automation to see whether we can survive with fewer employees, or whether we can automate a lot of things and make those employees work on something productive that organizations think that they're not working on productively right now, right? And in some cases, I would say robotics has successfully managed to automate a lot of data center aspects. Like you look at intelligent racks today, you look at power management, you look at asset management, rack access management, and a lot of repetitive tasks like that. Robotics have automated, to be very fair and transparent. However, one key element that I think human beings have and robotics is lacking today is adaptability. So, for example, human beings can manage multifaceted tasks quite promptly, right? We deal with situational challenges and changes very quickly and proactively, and human beings learn and evolve over time. Now, that doesn't mean robotics and AI in general are not evolving, but despite of the billions of dollars that we're spending on robotics and AI research, it is still quite hard to mimic a human brain-like architecture in a robot that works exactly the same as a human being in general and a human being in a data center in particular. So I still think robotics leveraging the human brain-like architecture is still a far-fetched concept, and it will take its due time to mature. That's my take on it. Professor Mona, if you're there.
Professor Mona, can you hear us? I think she is
He
again.
just dropped off.
Yeah,
I
so
just noticed her dropping off.
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, to follow
Okay,
on that.
she's back. She's back
Did
now.
you hear me now? Yeah, hear me?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes, Professor.
Did you
can.
hear me? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Saaim. We would like to talk about what are the trends, and we would like to redefine this space, enabling what kinds of innovation are driving organization toward automation in the data center.
Thanks, Professor Mona. I
Mr.
would
Saaim?
actually, yes, can you hear me fine? Okay.
Yes,
I would
hearing
continue.
now.
Sure. I would continue to actually my talk about the human brain-like architecture. So those are some of the impediments and challenges that we see in data center today, that it's hard for robotics to mimic a human brain-like architecture. However, with that being said, data center is still evolving, and its evolution is amazing. If you look at the automation that we've achieved in data centers. Look at the prefabricated modules, for example. It's very easy to deploy a data center today at a much faster pace and easier to scale up and scale down. And I'm talking about on-prem data centers here. So very easily you can scale up and scale down. Although cloud data centers provide much more scalability and reliability in some cases. However, even the prefabricated modules that you can host locally, especially in KSA when the governance laws are impacting such local hostings, you can easily scale up and scale down. In addition to that, you can look at green data center solutions, for example. There's free cooling, renewable energy, waste recycling. All of this can immensely reduce your cost of capital by 40%, right? And on top of this, you have robotics automating data centers. Especially, I would talk about two key examples, the iRobot, which can go around a data center and monitor the temperature and data metrics, similar to how your automated vacuum in your house can clean your house automatically. Think about iRobot roaming around in data center and monitoring your server temperature, right? There's another example, Scout, which is a mobile-based robot data center management system, which can go around a data center, follow the NFC tags, and inspect those servers. So similar to how you have NFC technology in your cell phones, where cell phone to cell phone connectivity can become seamless, you can have NFC technology in robots, right? And they can go to the servers with NFC tags and inspect them. So those are some of the innovative trends I've seen in data center, and organizations are adopting to that because of these trends, because they can automate a lot of data center activities. Over to you, Professor Mohamed.
I was eager to ask Arshad about some of the success stories, because Saaim, since you mentioned a few cases like the Roomba going around your data center, I'm sure a few people in the data center are going to cringe around that idea, a glorified vacuum cleaner in your data center, right? But Mr. Arshad, if you could talk about a little bit about success stories. Let's take on that good example that they put together, and maybe you can mention a few of those success stories that from your experience would also make sense. Even though I like the Roomba, but I'm not sure I'll be quite happy to let it roam around my data center.
Thank you, Milen. Thank you for inviting me on this topic. Actually, you already explained about the pros and cons about having robotics and automation and how it's going to help in future. But eventually, it reminds me of certain cases where in the past couple of years, we have seen tremendous success of the usage of AI-based robotics and automation for data centers. It reminds me of one of the case where Google has recently joined this operation, and now they are going to build underwater data center. It is still, I mean, in talks, but they are trying to develop a technology where they can maintain a cost effectiveness along with the cooling as a main factor, because as we know, the data center consumes almost 1% of the total world energy consumption, and it's a big issue. It also relates to the cost. So they are focusing on that area right now. And quite recently, I just came to know that few data centers like such as Facebook or Amazon, they're trying to build their data center in Sweden, or some are still in talk to create it on North Pole, which is, of course, because of the reason the cooling factor. Eventually, if you talk about the success stories, so almost all of the data center automation is focusing in that area. Now, not just that, there are a few more cases, such as cloud technologies from Alibaba. They have gone beyond one step, and now, as Mr. Saaim has explained, it's quite easy for them to automate the task within the data center, and the patching, the patching and the upgrades and the changing the tapes in the library. That becomes quite an essence now. So we do not need to engage manual force into that, and it is quite conveniently they can manage it through the use of robotics. And it is, and of course, we need a lot of resource to do daily operations. But now this is quite common. We can use the DCIM technologies to use the orchestration. And almost right now, as you mentioned initially, that with the evolution of DevOps and the multi-cloud environment, now it is becoming more popular to have the that flexibility and the fast-paced deployment across the data centers. So it is very much difficult to manage and match the speed of the automation. So I mean, in this scenario, I believe we are going more towards the automation, and by the year 2025, there is a prediction that most of the 70% organization will move to this automation speed. So I believe that helps.
Yeah, thanks for that insight. I'm going to play the devil's advocate here a little bit. Like in 2015, I think Microsoft pulled out that Project Natic from the Pacific Ocean. So in 2015, they had their underwater data center, Microsoft. 2015, that's, you know, what, 7 years ago? They pulled it out after 150 days, you know, and that container looked battered. You know, they said, oh, it was very successful, all is great. But where are our underwater data centers today? And one of the reasons that they stated as lessons learned is that you would need those maintenance robots to be remotely accessible, so people can go and do maintenance and various operations in the data center. Imagine that thing is running underwater, picking it up from, you know, the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean and doing maintenance is not going to be easy.
Yeah.
But let's talk about more real things, because in our data center, you know, we don't have any robots going on. We have some automation. I wanted to ask Mr. Mohamed Gamal about the acceleration. What are the drivers to make it a success story? Because as you see, like, some of the stuff, it's only driven by the large companies like the Googles, the Microsoft, etc. When is the little guy like you know, me and you and all of our businesses can benefit from this thing? Isn't this only, you know, we read this about the IBM vacuum cleaner going around and the big companies that can afford the R&D budget. But when is it coming to us? What are the acceleration factors that can maybe help us guide through these problems and overcoming these problems? Mr. Gamal, please.
I think I will go out from the standard answer to talk about the tools and the solution we have in the market to help us to innovate in our data center. And I have to mention my experience when I started to learn and understand the cloud technology, where we have partner and vendors coming to our offices offering their cloud or data center, and justify the investment for innovation. But is it really innovation when we just shift the workload from our data center to other people's data center? That was important question. And even though people are following the trend to just say that we have a cloud system and we have our solution hosted in the cloud, sometimes does not bring any value to organization. Innovation starts when we realize the value of this investment. And most of the companies, when they start, shifting to the cloud and automate their data center, the innovation part or the percentage is lower than the operation cost, which is mainly 30 to 70%. Later on, when they refine tune the process, they refine tune the tools, when they have enough skilled people to automate the majority of the tasks, then the innovation and the value increase on their data center. As you rightly mentioned, if we're talking about the cloud vendors and the data center partner, we know that they have automated their data center for a simple reason. Automation boosts the profit margins. We know about Google have container technology maybe since 2010 or 8, and we just started to hear about container and the automation tools and platforms to modernize our infrastructure. Nowadays, we have also these tools released for small players, technology players in the market to customize and use the way they want, even for development of software or infrastructure, to provision infrastructure for the development or for any purpose. We know that this limitation when it comes to technology is there. I would agree, of course, with my colleague when he mentioned about the adoption, because myself, I used to work in an organization trying to introduce this piece of technology, and I can see the issues and the challenges there of delivering the software and how the process is not streamed from the infrastructure provision to development, testing, going through all the cycle to till the release, and then continuous improvement is there, all done manually or partially automated. But nowadays with current technology, we can do it. We have to think also about multi-cloud deployment. It's not about IBM, Red Hat, or Microsoft or Google. We can have our data center, we can have our application and solution customized for multi-cloud deployment. This deployment are often built on a hybrid platform that we can build, or even with other tools and system we could have. Like we can see the a container platform, for example, is there on there is an orchestrator from Red Hat, like OpenShift or VMware, or so this all help us to have this computing operations automation exist. And if I'm talking about the industry like healthcare, it require more understand of what is the new technology, how we can adopt it, and how we can use it to help the business and helps the technology people to utilize to solve their problems.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, obviously, we won't solve world peace here and now, but I think that the major take homes include things like how would small companies and how would, well, not small, but I would say companies that are outside of the tech industry would be able to use these accelerating factors to their advantage. So in terms of the accelerating factors and solving those problems that we mentioned, the cost, the lack of qualified people, et cetera, et cetera. So still, you think, Mr. Arshad, is a question to you, your point, something to add to what Mr. Gamal said. It was interesting to hear the healthcare sector sort of point of view. And what is your take on the acceleration? Brief now, because I think we're a bit conscious in time. What could you tell us in addition to this?
To be very practical, since we have already seen the problems and what we are facing right now, it's not about the manpower shortage. It's not about the shortage of the resources, but it is about how well we can manage things well. So in my opinion, what I have seen practically, as per my experience over the last 10 years, I have worked in entirely both dimensions. I have worked in the data centers where we are operating everything manually. I have worked where it's kind of hyper-converged architecture, and now we can see things are happening very fast. And there's no comparison as of now. So I believe there are some key benefits which I can specifically say in one word. One is the reduced human efforts. That is the most important thing when you're working in the data center. That is something which is driving an engineer or maybe an analyst who is working inside the data center to opt for the automation. Second thing is the cost factor, which is the reason why most of the organizations are focusing more on the automation and robotics these days, because it will definitely cut down their operational cost, and eventually they can focus more on the development. Third thing is the high availability. Okay, we can understand that for certain companies, it is already well defined that they're trying to manage 99.99% of high availability. But up to some extent, it is hypothetical. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. You see, like the cloud technologies like Google, GCP, or AWS, they are assuring 99.9999% of availability because of the reason they are automating most of their tasks. So this is one of the examples we can take. Now, moving forth, security and troubleshooting is really something which we should always look for. If more you can automate the task, more visibility and the you can say the control you have on the issues. If you cannot automate, you cannot relate the incidents which happen inside the data center. Let it be a simple temperature problem, or maybe something like there's some fault in the rack. It takes time to identify, but if you have the sensor installed, if you have a robotics engaged, if you have robot process automation, then in that case you can relate very well which rack or which desk, which server had the issue, and what is the fault tolerance method, what we can achieve out of that. So power consumption is again the next thing. So I believe these are all the points which are the main factor why we should move towards this technology, and in fact these are the factors which are telling us to accelerate towards the automation. Now, moving forth, I mean, there are multiple areas where the automation can be engaged. I mean, specifically, there's some like you can say about the hybrid cloud, or maybe you can say about network automation, which all started with the software-defined networking back in the year like 2012 or 13, maybe from Cisco. Now, things are moving very fast in that case. Now, we don't really require the manual intervention to do some manual action on the network side, because our automation tools are responsible to take that action on your behalf. They can, there is less chance of human intervention and errors as well, because if you are acting, maybe you're not proactive, or maybe you're not, you're a bit careless about your network infrastructure, it may cause a big blunder in the entire network. So these are the points which are really responsible for the acceleration.
Okay, now thank you for that. It's a bit close to my heart. From academia perspective, we're all like people that work in in the industry, but I really wanted to have a word from Professor Mona, if she's still with us, Professor Mona. Yeah, I think we have some connectivity problems. Final thing, the really exciting bit.
Yes, Milen. I'm
okay.
with you, yes.
Oh, fantastic. I just wanted to
Did you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little bit delayed, but we can hear you. From an academia point of view, research and development, what do you want to add to our participants? What would you say are the top, the hottest trending topics in R&D or on your field, where you have the vision and the understanding of research and development in data center? Anything you would want to add?
I think Professor Mona's facing issues again. Yes.
Yeah, it happens. Technology, yeah, it works, but not always. As a closing note, one use case from
the main trend that concern with all our research concerning the data center is the security issues. This is the more concern that
Yeah, I think we've got a little bit of a network delay issue. Right, I think that's all from us, unless you want to, each of us add quickly one use case that you're really excited about the future. One case that Mr. Steve already provided, a practical case of robotics in the data center, that iRoomba thing going around and checking for hotspots in the data center. This is something cool, and maybe in the future we're going to have service providers looking for those hotspots in the data center. Anything else? One use case each of the speaker. Mr. Saaim, starting with you.
Yeah, sure. I think adding on to what I mentioned about the iRobotics, which is similar to the Roomba vacuum cleaner, I think how we need to take that forward is making sure the iRobotics has a capability of measuring more metrics than what it's currently doing. So for example, it currently can do the temperature monitoring and data metrics monitoring, but it needs to go one step ahead. So that's the
more sensors on it. Fantastic. Yeah, good use case. Maybe physical security monitoring and stuff like that. Mr. Mohamed, Gamal, you have one practical use case that you think you were going to see in the next 5 years in the data center, robotics or automation?
Well, in robotics, I'm thinking about the security part where we have a detection system or a SOC, and then we have a remediation techniques to automate the remediation process for any threat detection or any security issues, which is now trending, and I've seen a lots of solution automating this remediation process. I think this is also one of the key points, since security is a concern for all of us actually to maintain the data security and confidentiality of our data center.
Okay, fantastic security, whether it's physical security monitoring or information security, making sure nobody's tampering with those racks. Mr. Arshad, one use case from you? Something that you feel excited about seeing in the data center space?
Yeah, I believe as we are evolving, right, infrastructure as a code is a technology where people are focusing more these days, and it also relates to the automation. The deployment happens so quickly, like unlike the old times. Now this is the area where you should focus more. And apart from that, the of course on the security side, the intelligence and analytics, those are the areas where we should focus more, and it could be helpful in the data center as well.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, there's a lot more that we can imagine, from drives that Google uses, from robots to destroy disk drives that Google uses, down to automatic patching in the racks. There are a lot of use cases. We're still to see a lot of development in this space. Unfortunately, I believe that this development is going to come from the major players, and it's not going to be easily available in our own small-time data centers, but we still have a lot of opportunities to automate and realize that cost saving and efficiency that we're looking for. Thank you very much for having us, for the invite. All the best to the event, and the attendees will be happy to take any questions offline if we have to. Thank you very much. That's all the time that we have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear panelists, Mr. Gamal, Mr. Aslam, Mr. Siddiquie, and our dear panel moderators, Professor Nasr and Mr. Nikolov, for an extremely interactive and insightful discussion, in spite of all the technical challenges that we faced during this session. And I'd like to thank Mr. Nikolov for picking that up and moving ahead with the discussion. Thank you.